So, for example, a person says, "Oh, we don't have enough oil," and then all of a sudden we miraculously discover oil somewhere.
Ah,
As long as man needs a thing, it'll continue to be created.
right,
So as long as man needs money, there will always be a reason. There'll always be something created to require him to create money,
right,
right? So
right.
the first thing will have to happen is that man will have to get to a point where he no longer needs money, but he's satisfied with his work.
Here it is.
There it is.
Three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Way of Marco. This is episode number 7. I am your host, Marco Antonio Alvarez, and we have a very special guest today, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Memphis, Tennessee, the one and only Piere Gooch.
Hey, what's going on?
Good to have you, man. Good to have you. Thanks for being here,
Good to
buddy.
be here. It's good to be here. Long time coming, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I've always
Yeah,
wanted to
man.
have a conversation with you. Just the first day I heard your laugh, I was like, okay, I got it. I got to talk to this guy, man. I got to see what's up. And then also, the Batman shirt too. So
Yeah,
if
man.
you could show the viewers at home,
Yeah, man. You gotta just stick it up like that. You know, gotta go like that. Yeah, yeah. Never.
part of the same gang.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Awesome, man. How's your day?
The day is going quite well. I'm in the process of trying to build a bed from semi scratch. And when I say semi scratch, I mean I ordered it from Amazon and
Mm.
then it came in the mail. And so now I'm trying to put it together. So that's what I'm in the process of doing right before this call. So
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right,
yeah,
cool,
man.
cool. Right on, man. And so I wanted to get into a few things today.
Sure, man.
First one that caught my interest this morning was the post that you put up on Facebook
Oh, yes.
about gratitude. Right,
Yes.
and you've been in the sales game for what, 10 years,
4 years.
4 years,
4 years.
4 years, four
Hmm.
years, 4 years, and you've trained with a lot of the same people that I've trained with, except I didn't train with Dan Locke.
Hmm.
Um, and can you tell me more about that post, like as far as like where that came from and how that transitioned? Because it sounded like it was just this really gnarly experience to now what you're having.
Yeah, man. So I'll talk about the post, the concept of gratitude. I'm sure that anyone who's, in the sales space has been in any kind of training or just kind of peruse YouTube, you've heard the idea about the power of gratitude.
Mm,
And I think the challenge with salespeople is that because they're on commission, like they're somewhat guns for hire,
mm,
the temptation is to be obsessed with the game, but not obsessed with gratitude. And when you obsess over the game, you lose the game. So you focus
mm,
on gratitude to win the game, you see. So for me, I was reading this book called The Law of Compensation, which is a book by a woman by the name, I think it's Marina Williamson, The Law of Divine Compensation. And she talked about this idea that um, you can only spend, if you want to spend she talked about how that most people divorce love from work, that their work and their love are contrary.
mm,
That love may exist in every other area except in the area of money where it really needs to belong. And how that the process of business is with the exchange of love. If you're doing right by another person, you're holding that person in the highest regard. And I think this is why the sales um business, if you will, gets such a bad rap because the concept of sales is that the person that I'm talking to is indeed the transaction.
mm,
When I close this person, they are the transaction, they are the money. And so being able to remember that the person is not the money, they're only a conduit for the money, knowing for a fact that love or the universe or God or however you classify that will be the source of that is a really, really heavy thing. So she talked about that being able to do that starts with practicing gratitude on a daily basis. Not gratitude necessarily for just the people, which is good, but gratitude to the fact that there's something bigger than you taking care of you, which I think is really, really powerful. Um,
100%.
and so kind of looking at the post that I made today, I look back on I had been in customer service like before I got into sales, I was in customer service like more than a decade. I
Wow.
was working for various kinds of people. And the challenge with being in customer service, as I'm sure most of you are aware, that the only reason why people call customer service is when something has went wrong,
Mm,
right? Whether it be major or minor, something has went wrong, and they want the person on the other end to fix it magically immediately. And so if you've ever talked to a person in customer service, ever heard a comedian talk about customer service,
Yeah.
there's always like this, it's always like this really, really bad segment to it because you're getting hauled in most cases, being cussed at, people are like calling, telling me they're going to report you to whatever it is, like you like, hey, go ahead. No, don't do that. And so it's like, and so I spent more than a decade doing that for various companies. I worked in escalations for a long time. Escalations mean like when somebody says I need to speak to a supervisor, which
Mhm.
means it's gone terribly wrong. Everything's gone terribly wrong. And so now they get on the phone with the supervisor or with person in escalations, and now they're cussing at them. So I dealt with a lot of that for a long period of time. And so ending up finding out from the sales space, I think you talked about Dan Locke before. He was my introduction into the sales world. He introduced the concept of skills.
Mhm.
Skills pay bills.
Yep.
Like the reason why you only make $14 an hour, which is what I was making at the time. He said the reason why you make $14 an hour is because the people that you work for has compared your knowledge and your skills to other positions and companies, and they determined that that was all your current skills are worth.
Mhm.
Now that was on a Thursday night. I think it's back in 2017, 2018, 2018. And every Friday, as long as I can remember, me and my family go out to eat. And I remember the day, it was a Thursday, so it was going into Friday, and he made that statement. Now, every Friday we go out to eat, and my favorite meal it's like a $20 meal back then. It's like 24, 25 now. It was like 24, $25. And what I said when he said that was, I said, what he's essentially telling me is that I am worth less per hour than my favorite Chinese meal.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's, long story short, I ended up getting into the sales world, whatever with that for a long time. And then finally got to a point where I was able to make consistent good money over time. Right. So that's where that post came from. Just me kind of looking back at that journey where I came from. So man, it's awesome. This is awesome.
It's a beautiful journey to have that. I was having a similar moment like that with myself last night, laying in bed. Um, as you know, I'm starting up with the same
Yeah, man.
the same party, the same
Yeah,
company.
man.
Yeah, and it's been almost 2 years that I've been involved in the space, and a little bit
Mm,
over a year since I've been active on roles.
yeah, man.
And this idea of paying your dues and getting punched in the mouth,
Hmm.
right, and learning those hard lessons, but then also having the gratitude for those lessons,
Yeah, man.
and not succumbing to the woe is me and why is this happening to me
Yeah.
mindset. It's one of the things that I've found supremely powerful about the sales space that I didn't even know was part of it,
Mm,
because beforehand I was like, sales, like, isn't that just pressuring, persuading, right?
yeah.
All those things that we,
Hmm.
the used car salesman. And then as I
Hmm.
started getting into it, I'm like, oh, dude, this is there's a once I started really get into it, I was just like, there's a spiritual component to this thing.
Very much
You,
so.
you know what I mean? And then
Very much so.
and that idea of gratitude, how like there's always there was that one character on Walking Dead. Did you ever get into Walking Dead?
No, I remember Night of the Living Dead, but not Walking
All
Dead.
right,
Right?
night.
That
Which
was
one?
cool.
Which? Well, we'll have to get back to Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
man.
so there was the I forget which season it was. I forget his name, but this dude was like the eternal optimist, right?
Okay.
And he was partnered up with this one lady on the show, and she would say, well, this totally sucks, and he'd be like, well, I mean, at least I got dry socks on my feet. And so he was always reframing it, right? He was always coming in with some type of gratitude, even like the shittiest of
Hmm.
situations. and
Hmm.
and, and I think that's the beauty that that we start off with gratitude, having that as a daily practice, right? Not
Daily
just,
practice.
yeah,
Yes.
right, not just like, oh cool, I read the book.
Hmm. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's I forgot how the saying goes exactly. Is training something you do or is it something you've done, right?
Mm,
And so the temptation, I think Cardone talks about this all the time. He was in the middle of one of his conferences or whatever it was, and then somebody raised their hand and stood up and they said, "Hey, Grant, how often should you train? Should you train?" He said, "Every day."
yeah.
He said, and he turned to Jared. I think it was Jared, and he says, hey, how long does it take you to get rusty in sales? And it's like a day. It's like in the next couple of hours, right? Because it is something, because practices that are not reinforced, they decay.
Yeah.
And practices like gratitude, which have a direct impact on your state, means your state changes too.
Yeah.
So unless you make the decision to harness and master state using gratitude, and you always be up and down in the sales space, always up and down. Great customers come in, bad customers come in, and you'll reflect the personality, the nature of what you perceive is going on at the time. So it's really, really important to kind of snatch it back in a way, mastering gratitude. Right. That's what I'm learning now anyway. Right. So there you
Sure.
go.
Sure,
There
sure,
you go.
sure, sure. It's that, the importance of, they talk about detach from the sale.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember being on an offer and I was piff hungry,
Hmm.
working every day to get that money, and it was awful.
Yeah, man.
It was awful, and it's like I think that having that daily gratitude practice it's a really surefire way to detach from the sale.
Hmm.
To be like, look, I got everything I need.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that dichotomy and paradoxical nature of sales,
Hmm.
where it's like, okay, look, we're doing this for the money,
Yeah.
and we also can't be attached on that fact. So
Exactly
let's
right.
let's bring this to the forefront. So that's kind of like just not there in focus.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly
man.
right, man.
Do you do you feel like this is something that you're going to do till you're an old man, or is this something that you'll springboard into like other things, like going into business for yourself and
You're
things like
referring to
that?
sales, yes?
Yeah. I'm referring to
Okay.
like your future in sales. Like, where do you want to go with this? Will you create the Pierce? Will you create the Pierce style? Because here's the thing I noticed too is that you've trained with quite a few people, and I wanted to ask this
Mm,
question. I think there's two questions here.
okay.
Do you notice this? Since because I view sales through a martial arts lens, like different
Okay.
styles, right?
Okay.
And so you can always pick out the similarities and styles.
Hmm.
Question for you: you find that there's like this similar vein that exists throughout the different sales styles?
Okay. So I think that one of the most important things, especially for people who are brand new, is to get a really, really good understanding about how the sales process itself works. Now, a great way to do that would be to go out and find a book like Sales and Selling for Dummies.
Mm,
Believe it or not, Sales and Selling for Dummies, like getting a good understanding about how the sales process works. Now, what you'll find when you go through different sales trainings is that each person has a variation on specific elements of that process, right?
yeah.
So
Yep.
what you have to do, and this is something that I've really caught on to as I've gone through so many different kinds of trainings, is that you can get where you want to be if you stop following flashy things and do the practical work of perfecting the craft with what you have, right?
Yep.
So, for example, you look at a person now, there's obviously better ways to do everything, obviously. But the challenge I think that happens, and I was talking to a young man who asked me for coaching not so long ago, which I don't do, so don't reach out to me.
Too late, man. It's gonna
don't
happen
don't
now.
reach out to me, okay?
Don't reach out. Don't reach out.
Don't reach out. Okay, one of you. It's gonna be no. So like he reached out to me and he was asking about this particular trainer from this particular influencer, very, very well known. And he's like, oh man, I'm just kind of getting swept up by the testimonials and all this stuff that's going on is so great. And I want to kind of get into it. And I was like, hey man, I said, I wouldn't advise going into finding more training until you developed a clear problem to solve.
Mm,
Right?
mm.
So you have people kind of jump from program to program because they kind of sucked away with the marketing and things like that.
Yep. Yep.
And then moving into these new things because they haven't developed a clear enough problem to solve. Going back to state control that we were talking about a bit earlier, they haven't developed the conscious awareness to master their own state, being clear enough about what is it that you want from this other thing. Making more sales is not a goal, right? Solving a specific problem within the process to get the sales is. So a great example is I was talking to a young man. I never forget I was on a sales call with one of the trainers that you and I have been with, Bill.
Hmm.
And I was just like quit. I was quite lethargic. I was just like, no more sales training for me. No, now I'm just not gonna be bothered. And we got on the he and I got on the call, and he says, what do you want? And I was like, I want to make, X amount of dollars per month. And then he said, well, what do you feel like is coming up for you that's causing you not to get there? And I said, well, it's these three areas. And I was very, very clear about what I wanted to solve, which got me into the program, which got me better at those areas, which made me more sales. But what typically happens is everybody else is doing it. I really, really love the marketing. Let me just go and do that.
Sure.
And then there's like the obvious complaints come up. The fact that they're not getting where they want to be is because you never had a clear enough problem to solve. So you spend thousands and thousands of dollars, hours and hours of coaching, but you never had a clear enough problem to solve to even go into a new program.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, that's the first thing that I would say to any person, just get a good understanding about the sales process and find a person. Now, don't worry about like, how big or how great or whatever that is. Find you a person to work with, okay? And then spend the time mastering their craft. Then as you continue to master that craft, problems will naturally surface. If the program that you're in cannot solve that problem, now it's time to look for something else. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That
Don't
makes
be
sense.
swept away with the emotion,
Right.
right? Be practical and deliberate with what you're doing. That's how you'll maximize on the money that you make, especially if you're just coming into sales, right?
Right. 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 Right.
Definitely.
Right.
Hmm.
100%. Well said. Well said. So I want to switch the gears up a little bit, right? And
Hmm.
let's talk about well, it's going to be a little controversial,
Okay.
right? Um, and look, man, everyone's got their opinion on this matter. And, I'm sure
Hmm.
people at home are going to tune in and hear this part, and we might get some hate mail on it. Well, you
Hmm.
more than me. We're going to talk about Batman, and
Okay.
so when I was checking in with you earlier in the week, you said and I was like bringing up the examples of like Keaton
Oh, yes.
and Bale
I
and
see where you're going.
what's his name? Patterson, Twilight Kid,
Pattinson. Yeah.
Patterson, right? And
Robert
then
Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson, and then you brought up Ben Affleck, which
And Affleck.
for a
Yeah.
moment I was taken aback, but then I stopped and I was like, actually, he did play a pretty good Batman.
He
Like
really did.
he
He
did.
really did it justice.
He really did. I only give him crap because of what happened on South Park when the South Park guys just destroyed him, and it was really hard to get that out of my mind. And then
Yeah.
I'm like Ben Affleck's going to be Bruce Wayne.
Hmm.
All right, let's see how that goes.
Hmm.
So, is that your favorite Batman?
Yes. So, there's a couple reasons why. First of all, the fight scenes in that movie were amazing, absolutely amazing. But I think more than anything, it was watching. I think what attracts me to movies in general, TV shows too. I kind of go on a bit of tangent, like Sherlock Holmes show with
Mhm.
Benedict, Benedict Cumberbatch, that guy.
Beautiful show.
So everybody loves that show, and it is an amazing show. The
Mhm.
dialogue in there is absolutely amazing. But I liked Elementary with I forgot his name. Elementary was on CBS. It was another variation of in the
Oh,
show.
really?
Yeah, I forgot his
Oh,
name though. I can never remember his name. But anyway, the reason why I liked that one over Sherlock Holmes with Benedict was because it spent a considerable amount of time showing how he did it. So
ah,
one of my favorite quotes in the show, the elementary show, was he's talking to Watson, and he was like, Watson, sometimes you cannot outthink a criminal. You have to outwork them.
oh.
You see? And so you'll see scenes of him like wearing these crazy looking masks to see how long it takes a person to breathe before they need to get air, or having like 1,000 case files in the floor, spending the time deconstructing it. See, it's like I like the process. And
Mm,
so watching Ben Affleck do it, like you saw him working out in the gym.
yeah,
Like you saw him getting frustrated with why he couldn't solve a particular case
yeah,
or
yeah,
couldn't figure out how to
yeah,
beat Superman. You see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
There's not enough of that in shows. I think there's like even in the sales space, and I'm kind of going back and forth, right?
That's all good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even in the sales space again, there is I see the beginning and the end, but not the middle. And the middle is what's the most important. It's great for you to tell me you made 50, $100 million, per month in sales. That is great. But how did you do it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? What is your process for getting from here to there? Because your advice here may not apply to me here. If I'm just starting, your advice on where you are right now won't work well for me now. Right? So being able to look at here's the beginning and the end, but also here are the steps that I took. Here's what I dealt with, both from a mental and a physical skill perspective to get to where I'm at now.
Right. Right.
There was a guy named I think it was T-Pain, right?
Yeah.
T-Pain, T-Pain got on a radio show and he talked about he said he says when I got into music, T-Pain was huge for a period of time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge for a period of time. And he said, I wish somebody would have pulled me over and told me the money's not gonna always be like this. He said, I wish somebody had told me that. He said, but nobody told me. He said, I didn't care who it came from. He said, I just wish somebody would have sat down and told me it's not, the money's not going to always be like this and how to deal with that. And so
Right.
now he said, because he's had that experience, he now is able to take the time to talk to other artists in his space. Hey, the money's not going to last like this forever. This is what you should be doing.
Yep.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that I think I'm more focused in on like process, like I'm really into biographies and autobiographies now.
Mm.
I think those are really really great. I was listening to Will Smith the other day, and I was like, I can see why the slap came. Right?
Sure.
There's a quote that I love which says, "You can learn to love anyone if you knew their story." And
True.
so listening to his story, his background, I was like, man, that dude had a lot of stuff going on in this world. Complicating with that with now this thing with Chris Rock that passed not so long ago. I can see where it's like you can watch it all play out. It's like I see where this is coming. I see where that was going.
100%. 100%. That's kind of like it's what was it? Which movie was it? It was it was Manhunter.
Mm,
It was the very first Silence of the Lambs films,
yeah,
right?
man.
And there was
Classics.
yeah, classics, right? And there was a scene where Ray Farina was the FBI guy with the profiler,
Hmm,
Will
hmm,
Graham, I forget,
hmm,
and he was describing the psychological profile of what happened to him and how he felt bad for him as a kid and this and that. And he's like, wait, are you feeling sorry for him? And he's just like, for the kid, yes, but for the adult, like, boom, I'm gonna
hmm.
blow him away, that kind
Exactly
of a
right.
thing. And who was it? I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said, he was quoted as saying, like, I don't like that man, therefore I must get to know him better.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And like, let's take that model to the extreme. Right.
Hmm.
So for example, if we were talking about, one of the worst modern day examples, Adolf Hitler, right?
Yes.
And you were to understand his childhood and
Hmm.
read about it, and then you just start falling to pieces, and you're just like, well, that's how he turned out, right?
Exactly. Exactly right.
Jeffrey Dahmer, whoever. I'm just bringing up bad guys. Genghis Khan.
Hmm.
Genghis Khan is never brought well, unless like your tribe was affected by him, but then again, they were probably just totally
Hmm.
wiped out.
Hmm.
Because
Completely wiped out.
that dude was
He was
but
a
what
beast.
but why was that? It's just all these different things that lead up.
Yeah.
And so going back to what you brought up, like the training montage, the middle,
Hmm.
right? I love those in films, right?
Exactly.
Seeing the work that's getting done. It's like, okay, there's the beginning, the first step. It's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go. And, you got your
Yeah.
backpack, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
at the very end, you're at the top of the mountain. You're like, I did it, and it's just like,
Hmm.
wait a minute,
What happened?
yeah, what happened? I want that middle stuff, man. Like, show me what's going on right here.
Exactly. Those are things you can replicate. You can't replicate the beginning and the end
No,
because you'll never have the same start as someone else.
no, yeah,
Therefore, you won't always have the end. But if you can figure out what happened in between those two times, or you can figure out what to replicate and what you cannot replicate. You see? Hmm.
so is Batman your favorite superhero?
Yes.
Why?
Yes, definitely. I think it's because he can be built. right? I can't go to Krypton, right, and like absorb their radiation or whatever it is and become Superman. First of all, the technology doesn't exist to get there. Even if it was possible, right? The second thing is it's like I can't like get like a like what is that like the superhero serum like Captain America and drug myself up and become like like throwing shields and flipping over. I can't do all of that. That's not me. But I can go to different schools to learn subjects. I can travel across the world to learn from masters. I can spend my time over and over working on a particular skill. I can do those things. And will I get to the level of Batman? Probably not. I don't think there's anyone in the world that can do that, right? But I can take elements of that and become my own version of what Batman would be if he was in this role.
Mhm.
What would he be in this role,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How would he approach this situation? I'm gonna give you a great example of this. So I think it was during December. It was during December, one of the worst Decembers I've ever had in sales ever. And in that time, I think I made like three sales in like a month and a half. It was terrible.
Oof.
Yeah, it was rough. It was a terrible time. And what happened was that I was trying to work two offers, and I was captain over a team all at the same time.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was rough. Yeah, it was a rough game. And what ended up happening was is that I was trying to the new offer that I was on at the time. There was a lot of stuff going on with it. A lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of shifting around with the offer, and they were trying to figure out how to sell this, that, and the third, which is really, really important to really be clear about what you're going into an offer for. Going back to again, like really, really doing your homework. And so, yeah, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare, and it was to a point that I was like sitting there, I was like, man, I must be a terrible salesperson, terrible. Okay. And what ended up happening, man, is I just kind of took a step back. I just kind of found myself kind of stepping out of certain things just to sit down and figure out, okay, like what is the actual problem? The
Mhm.
problem was I was burning out. I was trying to solve too many problems at once, right? There were things going on here, there were things going on there was things going on in the background, there were things going on at home. And so it's just like it was just too many things to try to solve at one time. And so after I sat down and figured out, watched videos of myself closing, watched videos of people that I admire who are salespeople, being in different groups and things like that, talking to people and things like that, I figured out what it was. It wasn't the fact that I needed to change something with my process. I just needed to be clear-headed enough to see how good I was doing at the time and capitalizing on those things.
Right.
Sometimes it's not about the things that you're doing wrong per se. It's the fact you're just not doing enough of the right things,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and so that's what it was. Like, so taking a problem, breaking it down, figuring out how to solve it, and then just doing it, right? Just doing it. Hell or high water, just do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what it was, man. So that's what I love about Batman. I call myself on my profile uh Batman's alter ego.
I saw that. I
Yeah.
saw that. Yeah. I saw.
Batman's alter ego, right? So just kind of spending time learning, growing your skill. I had made a goal for myself, which was if you look at how much it costs to become Batman, not to
Mhm.
be Batman, but
Yeah.
to become Batman, it'll cost you about $1 million to do it. Now, here's something I think you'll appreciate. Like to become for the United States military to train a person brand new to become a Navy SEAL, for example, it'll cost the government $400,000 to do that,
That's it. Wow.
right? It's crazy
Damn. That's a
for one
bargain.
person. Yeah, for $400,000 for one person. So for me so I had made a goal, which was I want to spend at least $1 million on my self-education. Whatever that looks like, $1 million on self-education. I don't know what exactly I'm gonna become after that, which goes back to your earlier question about, hey, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna be in sales forever? I have no idea,
Yeah.
right? But I know that I want to spend at least $1 million on my education just to see what would happen if I did. You
Sure.
see,
Sure.
so
Sure. That's so that brings me to this other point that I've been fascinated with. And um, uh, are you a big sci-fi fan?
yes,
Okay. This one, I mean, typically,
yeah,
superhero
comics and
fans are,
sci-fi,
are, are
yeah.
sci-fi. They go together. I mean, it'd be really weird to meet somebody who's a comic book fan and be like, I hate sci-fi. I'm like, whoa.
Curse those sci-fi people.
Right. Totally. He's like, look, I'm into superheroes and Louis L'Amour novels, and that's it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like what an
yeah,
odd
yeah,
combination. He's like, yeah,
yeah,
I wrote some fan fiction, Batman in the Old West. So,
yeah, man, yeah, man.
so, so what I bring it up is this, right? Is the conversation that I think people are either discounting or overinflating, and that is of AI,
Okay.
right? And this idea of potentially this inevitable convergence between us and our creations, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if we look at our phones,
Mm-hmm.
they're already on us throughout the
Mm-hmm.
day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course there's the watch, so you don't have to pull it out of your pocket, so you can just do this.
Mm-hmm.
They're working on Neuralink.
Mm-hmm.
What sense do you have, just having being a fan of the comic book space and then
Mm-hmm.
also sci-fi, because
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion science fiction is essentially de facto research for companies,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the stuff that's been created and written about, or
Mm-hmm.
everything from the
Mm-hmm.
the communicators in Star Trek, our cell
Mm-hmm.
phones, to what we got going on now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see this future playing out?
I think it'll be the same as most everything. Man has always sought ways to become better. It's ingrained in its nature. But every time man finds a way to make a particular task that he performs automated, he then elevates himself to do something different,
Mm.
right? So for example, like the airplane. Like man can't fly. He wanted to get from one place to another to get there a bit faster. So he created planes. Well, when he created planes, he also had to create ways to be able to analyze and keep track of where those planes were. Therefore, another job position was created. You understand? Same thing with AI. AI is great, and I think it's a powerful, powerful tool, but there will always be man's desire to be more,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as more of his more basic or menial tasks are taken over, more of himself he'll discover to do something new,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's just my perspective on that. Now, along the side of that, like in terms of like what people should be focusing themselves on doing or learning, I think all forms of communication should be should be the primary focus of every person. If a person is, let's say a person is listening to this podcast and they're completely broke, the number one skill that you should be mastering is not becoming an AI software designer or something like that. You should learn to become a better communicator,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because every system that exists is run by a human being.
Sure.
And so this is going to be an unpopular thing. So the weakness of every system is the human being.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the justice system is absolute, right? You ran a stop sign, you should get a ticket. But guess who hands out the ticket?
A
The
human.
human being does.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
And the human being is run by its emotions and its logic, and that can be hacked.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yep.
So the most important skill that a person can master is the ability to communicate, whether it be communicate to sell, communicate to do public speaking, communicate to write, communicate to write code. It doesn't matter. He needs to be able to communicate. I'm gonna give you a great example of this. There's a famous con man. His name is Frank Abigail. There's a movie, if you guys want to catch it, it's called Catch Me If You Can.
Ah,
And it's with
yeah.
Tom Hanks and I forgot the
Leonardo.
other guy, Leonardo
Yep.
DiCaprio.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, he literally spends his entire life going through different professions, finding himself in different parts of the world because he knew how to communicate. Imagine that. Imagine that. No education, no background, just the ability to understand how to communicate with another human being. He hacked every system on the planet.
Yeah.
So imagine the people that are in the world right now who think that they're limited because they don't have the experience. This is a good one here. Like I'll see people in groups and they're like, I don't have any experience
Right.
in sales. I don't have any experience. Nobody will hire me. I said, it's probably because you're a poor communicator. You're a poor communicator, right? Because if you were a better communicator, right, and better communication is not as difficult as people make it seem. As long as you can know how to master your state particularly, and then made to know what to say, you can pretty much communicate with anyone. There's this guy on YouTube. I never forget it. He talked about how they programmed an AI to communicate how to communicate normally, like have an average conversation with a person. And so the way they did it was they just programmed the system, just memorize conversations. So
Mm-hmm.
it fed them thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of conversations, and then words upon words upon words. And the system's function was to predict the natural, normal response to a statement. Sounds like AI to me, right? So,
Right.
so being able to communicate should be your number one priority. I don't care if you're going to go into something else. Your primary thought process, your primary skill you should be mastering is the ability to communicate.
100%. 100%. It's
Hmm.
all about communication.
Got to communicate, man.
You got to communicate. We are, as far as well, I mean, dolphins and whales, they communicate with each other.
Precisely.
Right. And who knows how other animals are communicating, but as far as just humans go in general, and then, dolphins and whales, like, we are a talking species.
Yes.
Like, when I drive by, two people just in the middle of anywhere and they're talking, I'm like, what could they be talking about? You know, anything, right?
Hmm.
Now, you brought up a really cool point as far as things that we develop, the tools that we develop to help essentially, make our lives easier, that allows us to pursue other things, right?
Hmm.
And so there's almost like there, I want to keep going a little bit longer. Like, we're already at the half hour marker. So are you okay with?
Are we?
Okay, yeah, I know, man. I went like that, right? So there's like, I get this sense with what AI is going to be able to do for us, where, remember Steven Spielberg's film Artificial Intelligence,
Yes.
right? 1,000 years in the future, there was essentially these compassionate, sentient robots, right?
Right. Right.
And here we are as humans, dealing with the emotions that we deal with getting angry, with getting resentful, this and that, and that's part
Hmm.
of our programming, because it's just this part of this fleshy experience that we're having, right?
Hmm.
And now we've got this thing that we can, like,
Hmm.
tailor make. So it's like, I want to make this thing as, like, compassionate and empathetic and loving and caring as possible. Let's see what happens. And then I want to download it into this, Boston Dynamics robot.
Right. Right.
Right? Because
Right.
that's
Right.
what's probably going to happen.
Right.
Probably already happening.
Hmm.
And then I guess what I'm driving at is, it almost seems, because there's also the talk of the universal basic income that's on the rise, because more
Hmm.
people are going to be losing their jobs and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And how some folks, some influencers and thought leaders have mentioned, saying that this is going to give humans an opportunity to be more creative, right?
Hmm.
To have a more fulfilled life, as far
Right.
as, possibly, going out and trying to attain more spiritual pursuits and things like
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
And so that's kind of like, I think that's kind of like where you were going with it, where, you know wherever, because it seems like AI is going to this particular direction. And here's something that I thought last night. There's this fear that it's like AI might destroy us, but then I think are we thinking that because that's how we think?
Hmm.
Because if this thing becomes sentient, self-aware, and conscious,
Hmm.
and how much more powerful it's going to be, it's not going to be thinking like us. It might think in such a way to where it's like this. I don't know. Could it become this, like, supremely benevolent thing, where it's like, hey, by the way, I see you guys struggling. Here's the cure for cancer. Oh, by the way, I see you guys struggling. Here's how you figure out global warming.
I
You
see where
see what
you're
I'm
going.
saying? Is that, yeah, yeah.
Man, as unfortunately, man, anything man touches cannot go without being fixed, right? So anything man touches, so for example, man builds a car, man has to do maintenance on the car, right? There isn't a time in which a man will develop something where he won't need to maintain it in some shape, form, or fashion. I don't think that there will ever be a thing like that. Now, to go back to will man develop something that will be a benevolent version? He won't be able to until he becomes it himself,
Mm.
right? Because everything reproduces after its own kind, including technology,
Yeah.
right? So until man, that goes back to my point I made a bit earlier, which is like as man continues to evolve and elevate his own consciousness and awareness, then he won't be able to produce a machine that will allow him the ability to be freely away from and then accept correction from something like that. Because think about that. We don't like people telling us what to do right now.
Right.
So imagine creating something that now tells you, oh, you need to stop eating cheeseburgers. It's like who are you? It's like so until man's consciousness elevates, him producing a machine or a device that he'll be willing to cooperate with on that level will be very difficult to do. So what I think will happen is like what I think will happen maybe 100 years, maybe 150 years, maybe 200 years, I don't know. Man will have to spend a good amount of his time being released from the need for things, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite books is from um, the science of being great, and the science of series by Wallace D. Wattles. The science of being great, science of getting rich, science of being well. I think those are amazing books. But what he talks about in the science of being great is as long as man needs a thing, there will always, that thing will always be found by him. So, for example, a person says, "Oh, we don't have enough oil," and then all of a sudden we miraculously discover oil somewhere.
Ah,
As long as man needs a thing, it'll continue to be created.
right,
So as long as man needs money, there will always be a reason. There'll always be something created to require him to create money,
right,
right? So
right,
the first thing will have to happen is that man will have to get to a point where he no longer needs money, but he's satisfied with his work.
right.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm,
He
mm-hmm.
doesn't need to be compensated for his work, but he's satisfied with his work.
It's like what the future is in Star Trek.
Exactly.
Right. It's that future of Star Trek. And then of course we got the Ferengis, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can appreciate them more now that I've been in the sales and business space. Um,
Hmm.
man,
Laws of acquisition.
a lot of acquisitions, right? For sure. We can keep going for another half hour. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to wrap it up because I definitely want you back on the show. We're going to, pick up where we left off because
Yeah, anytime, man.
yeah, absolutely, man. I just really appreciate it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that was a wonderful conversation. Let's give it up one more time for Mr. Piere Gooch.
Yeah,
For those
man.
people at home watching, the one person. No, I'm just kidding. There's a few. So
You
if
did
you
like what
like,
that guy said. I hope nobody's watching this. We
yeah,
can keep
right.
this a secret.
Totally, totally, totally. Oh, yeah, I did want to bring up something that was pretty funny. The different AI experiments that they've done when like the AI pops out like all racist and sexist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like a man was responsible for that. No, a man was responsible for that. A man was responsible for that.
Totally,
Ah,
totally, totally right.
yeah,
It's like they gotta have like a Buddhist monk hang out with them just to like teach you how to
yeah,
meditate or
yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
dude.
yeah, yeah.
All right, my friend, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And well, ladies and gentlemen, subscribe wherever the button is. This has been the 7th episode of The Way of El Marco. Have a good night, everyone, or a good morning, or whatever time you're watching this. Thank you so much.